Okay, we are holding in Maimer Shlishi. It is on page Kuf Tes Vav. Kuf Tes Vav, and it's the second paragraph on the left-hand side of the page. It begins with the acronym Ayin Daled Zayin. So the Rebbe was teaching us how this pigam, the blemish of Yesod, was instrumental in the destruction of the Dur HaMabel, the generation of the flood. And that the Torah pins the Averos down to a blemish in the midah of pigam of Yesod, and also to chamas, to robbery, but that the starting point, the shoresh, the root, was the blemish of Yesod. Okay, so the second paragraph. Al derech zeh. Al derech zeh yesh lefarish gam inin Sodom va'amora. Along this path we can explain as well the averos of Sodom and Amorah. Im ki mikol ma'amorei Chazal mashma she'ikra hapegam shelahem hayachzarios. If you look at the collective teachings of Chazal about the behavior of Sodom, the picture that emerges is that they were really a society that was awfully cruel, and it was even sort of just part of the law of the land, of the wrongness of doing kindness. Some say that maybe those ideas were built on the concepts of, we need to build a strong society, so therefore we can't help out other people. We can't make any sort of dependency, any sort of welfare to even the extreme. Because any act of chesed is just going to encourage some sort of great dependency, and therefore maybe even rooted in some, quote, ideas that are for the betterment of the society. But whatever the cause of it was, the nature of this place was one of great cruelty. That's what you see from all the different teachings of Chazal, and you see from the story itself that it was a great peril that Lot took in these guests, and that the people wanted to kill him for nothing less than the fact that he was taking in guests. So although from Chazal it seems to be that the major damage there was lack of kindness and even stronger cruelty, and because of that, Sodom and Amorah were turned upside down. Gam sham hashoresh pora rosh v'la'ana hayamachmas pegam bris kodesh. Even there, one can see that the root of all the Ra had to do with a damage in Yesod. And so the Rebbe is going to show here also in Sodom and Amorah, this seemingly doesn't have anything to do with the damage in Yesod. The root of their cruelty was rooted in a damage, a blemish of Yesod. Now this you could see, he says, from the Psukim, like it says, says that the men of Sodom surrounded the house. It says, take out the men and let us know them. And Chazal say that what they intended was for Mishkav Zachar, for relationships between men. And that's why they surrounded the home, in order for them to be able to extract these men, to be able to do an act of Mishkav Zachar, a relationship between men. So says the Rebbe, so you see that their intention was for a great damage in in Yesod. That's what they were, that their intentions were. And further, that was the root of all their cruelty. And this will show. Now, it would seem that because of who Sodom was, their whole goal was for cruelty. So what does this have to do with the story? It's a little bit strange. Like, if we see from Sodom that their behavior was very corrupted and that they were extremely cruel, then this part of the story seems to be anomalous. Like, what is that really part of the story? Like, their whole intention was, not as against chesed. So this part of the story, take out the men and let us know them by doing mishkav zachar, promiscuity between men, is somewhat strange. So what are they dealing with? What are they getting involved with forbidden relationships? So it says, this is what we find in the Svarim that are digging deeper to discover the relationship between middos. The Svarim HaKadoshim say a fascinating insight, and that is that damage in the bris brings a person to cruelty. There's a relationship between the person's damage in Yesod, which is between they and Hashem, and between relationships of people, that it brings a person to cruelty. And I'll explain. Because the power of evil that is in the area of hashchasa, and the word hashchasa means corruption in the arena of the yesod, of the relationship to Hashem. Mishtalit ala adam umachnis osod olam achurban, completely dominates a person and brings him to the world of destruction. We don't need any greater proof than the lives of people that are in public position that have had their downfall because of Pagam and Yesod. Right? Damage in Yesod. Right? So what you see is that this particular midah can completely dominate a person and exhibits a control over them that brings them to the olam hachurban, to destruction. But more specifically, to the point that they can then embrace, love cruelty, and make them people of evil nature. So it doesn't only dominate a person and exhibit a certain control over a person where they seemingly just relinquish their power over to this midah, but even can bring them to the point of loving cruelty and introduce evil nature into themselves. Conversely, someone that rectifies this midah, someone that uses this midah properly, Nepach ish rachaman, they're transformed into be a compassionate person. Isha chesed v'abinin, a person of building, person of loving kindness. Kama d'chsiv b'Yosef. We find this demonstrated with Yosef. Shu ashalit v'umash b'lachol ha'aretz. Yosef is the paradigm of the person that had control of Yesod. Right? So Yosef is that tzaddik that had this midah to zenith, and had complete control and even tikkun, rectification, of this midah. And among the spheros, the sphere of Yesod, Yosef exhibits the midah of Yesod. Yosef is synonymous with Yesod. If you say Yosef, you mean is really Yesod. If you're talking about Yosef as the personality, you really mean the midah of Yesod as it's demonstrated in the highest level. And so if we say each tzaddik is the exhibition of a certain Midav Hashem, Yosef is Yesod. And what you find by Yosef is that Yosef was the provider of the land. Yosef gave sustenance to all of Mitzrayim during their days of famine. And that wasn't just a governmental position, as the Rebbe is pointing out. That's an indication of his midos, that he was providing. And we see this also when his brothers came. He provided for the whole Bnei Yisrael in the time of famine. And the Rebbe is linking that power, that koach of loving kindness and compassion to his control over Yesod. The Rebbe pointed this out in a similar way from the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. Or HaChaim HaKadosh said a very beautiful vart. When Yosef revealed himself to his brothers, he said, Ani Yosef Achichem, I'm Yosef, your brother. Shmechartem osim Mitzrayim, you sold me to Mitzrayim. So he said, I am Yosef, your brother. I was even your brother when you sold me. Even when you sold me away, I did not stop from the connection of brotherhood between the two of you. Even when you were doing this terrible act of cruelty. How is this possible? So, Or HaChaim HaKadosh, because Yosef was the master of the Yesod. And that someone has the power of Yesod, so they are linked to love. And therefore, even though the brothers acted with cruelty, Yosef felt the brotherhood, even in that moment of cruelty, because Yosef was a master of Yesod. So the root of the evil, Sodom v'Amora, which really resulted in cruelty, had its roots in a damage in Yesod. And this you see actually in the pasuk itself, where it says, "Va'anshe Sodom ra'im v'chatayim la'Hashem ha'od." When Hashem is going to introduce to Avraham why he's about to destroy Sodom and give him the opportunity to daven, the Torah narrates that the men of Sodom were ra'im v'chatayim la'Hashem ha'od, extremely ra to Hashem. And we've already seen, the Rebbe has pointed out, that when the Torah uses the word ra, just by itself, it relates to the midah of Yesod. The damage in Yesod. In Shmiras Abris. This we see from the story of Er and Onan, the sons of Yehuda, who did not want to bring Tamar to being pregnant because of her beauty, and therefore they spilled seed. And the Torah describes this as that they were Ra B'nei Hashem. So the word Ra, evil or bad, is synonymous with the damage of Yesod. And it says the same thing by the men of Sodom. It says the men of Sodom were Ra to Hashem. They were Ra to Hashem. And this reflects the damage in the bris. And that's the first place they're introduced. And thus it shows us that the whole damage of Sodom was linked to the bris. That was the root of what would be their damage of cruelty. The Medrash says, there are certain, areas, literally springs, that grow warriors, and certain ones that sprout promiscuity. Umayin shitim shalznus. It says when describing Sodom and why Lot, back in Parashas Lech Lecha, chose to live in Sodom, when Avram said that the two of us must part, was that Sodom was irrigated by water and was a very fruitful land for vegetation. So the Medrash understands this, I think, to mean that it irrigated Znus. It was the whole area was an area that just produced and encouraged Znus, and that was sort of the terrain of the land. What was going on over there? It was just Znus. We have similar places like that today. Ubir ha'inyana. So, what's the explanation? So, what the Rebbe is making the case that we see that there are many things linked to the pagam of the bris. In the case of, for example, the Dor HaMabul, the generation of the flood, there's the robbery and the rampant theft that was the closure for the decision for destruction was rooted in damage of the bris. Rabbi makes the case that Sodom and Amorah, why they were completely destroyed, which Chazal point to all their cruelty, is rooted in the pagam of the bris. But what's the connection that we can understand? That why is it that these things that are seemingly they're not connected? Right? One's a damage really interrelationship between people, one is between you and Hashem. What's the connection? It is. The explanations of this matter is like this. How is it possible that as a result of these damages, societies reach rampant theft and outright cruelty, like in the cases that we mentioned? These averos of theft and cruelty, even in just general ethics of society, they're completely puzzle. They're like, no, everyone understands this is no good. You can't have a society, even if the society doesn't believe in God. And no, everyone understands that you can't build a society where you don't have these things that are in check. You don't build a society that's built on theft. You can't build a society that's built on cruelty. It's not going to stand. So, how is it possible that something as fundamental and basic as that, which is so obvious and necessary, is yet happens and is the result of a damage of Yisod? How is it possible that a person comes to do these terrible acts between people as a result of the damage of Yisod, bris? So this, it's through the damages of the bris. The source of the damage of the bris has to do with the mind. In other words, when we think of the bris, so we think of a specific area of the body, a certain desire. And so it becomes difficult for us to understand how that's sort of klali, how that's sort of an Indian klali, how that's sort of holistic, how it's general. It seems to us to be pretty particular. Like you have a damage in this area, you have a damage in this particular midah, so it's sort of local. But the way the Svarim will understand, and the Rebbe will bring this out in letter Gimel, is that it's not a localized Avera. It's actually a very general Avera that has impact on different areas of the person. And this is really what we're driving at over here. And what all the Svarim are driving at is that Yisod is not a particular and localized Avera.
You're saying it hits the weak areas?
It hits the weak areas. It hits many areas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, because we naturally, when we think of it, we think, well, it's an Avera, and it has to do with a certain part of the person, a certain desire of the person, and that's the Chet. So, you have many different Averas that are rooted in different Middos. So, why is this sort of more general, more impactful? So, the answer is because it's not the way we think of it. The way we think of it is not correct. The proper way of understanding this is actually a much more klali, a general chet. And that's because it has to do with the mind. And if it has to do with the mind, it's not just linked in, let's say, in desire. It's just instinctual. Right? So, for example, let's say, the Baal Tanya, when he talks about the different sharashim, the different roots of Averos, of the person, so this would be linked to the, what he calls water, the nature of water, which is taiva, desire. And desire is just sort of an instinct that like an animal might have, and a human has also instincts. So that's not just its initial root. The initial root has to do with the moach hadas, thinking. That you allow this to enter into your mind, and to, for example, to fantasize about it, and to think about it, and it becomes something in your mind that's overwhelming, and actually grows with the person thinking about it. Right, this we see from the Rambam also. We learned the Rambam says that the mitzvahs lo ta'asev, lo sasuru achar levavchem v'acharei nechem, not to follow after your heart and your eyes, has to do with znus. And you have to curb, he says, you have to curb the machshavos, the thoughts of a person, that you limit them. In other words, that in the area of znus, even though it begins because of an instinct, it's natural to a human, it grows from the thought. It grows from allowing your mind to stay there. It grows from allowing the mind to fantasize. It grows from the mind dwelling on it. And that's where this midah grows. It's in the moach hadas. Not just that, it's much more than that. Al yedei through that, b'muvan haruchani, in the spiritual sense, nitrefes daito shel adam, then a person's mind becomes completely like a treifa. It becomes completely confounded and mixed up. Everything is turned upside down in the mind. Umekabel ha'adam hiluch machshava hipoch me'ha'emes, and the person then begins to accept a thought process that's mamish the opposite of truth. To the point. Ki be'enei sichlo, and then his seichel has now been so confounded and so warped that chamas v'achsarios heim davar yav v'tov, theft and cruelty become perfectly fine. Actually become very good things. In other words, because this has to do with the mind, and then what happens is the person's mind gets warped. Because the pagam is not localized to the area of taiva, of the instinct, has to do with your mind. And because the mind now is completely wrapped up and corrupted by this pagam, so then the mind absorbs corruption. And once the mind absorbs corruption, so then all the different thinking of the person becomes corrupted, distorted, just wrong. So it really has to do with the way of thinking. And since it has to do with the way of thinking, so then the whole thought process and even ideas of the mind become distorted. To the point that not only is it acceptable, not only is it good, but it becomes a part of the culture. This is an acceptable part of the culture. And so that we also have seen in our day, where things that the Torah calls ra, evil, not only becomes acceptable, but if you're not tolerant of it, so then there's something wrong with your thinking. So then the whole idea is completely turned upside down. So that which the Torah says is ra, is evil, the society says is tov, and then everyone else that thinks otherwise, they're ra. So that sort of thinking, which is the opposite of emes, one can come to when you begin to warp the mind. And warping the mind, it can begin with the pagam of Yesod. and again, return to the people in public position also. It's not sensible that a person will jeopardize and lose great honor and position because of a localized avera. It doesn't make any sense. How is it possible? The answer is that once a person gets attached to it, so then it dominates the person, overwhelms them, and then their whole thinking becomes corrupted and distorted, and the whole risk and things have become very changed because they're under a certain control. So they're under a certain control, and that control has to do with the mind. It's the mind, not only the taiva. And once you start to damage the area of the mind, so then all sorts of perspectives and all sorts of truths can be changed. And that's a very big chiddush. That's a very big insight. And how you see that this midah is much more klali, it's much more general than we normally think. Mashal mahadavar doma. It's a parable of adam shenitzhav daitu alav, to a person that becomes crazy. Achman al-Islam. God forbid they become crazy. And then they look at everything the opposite of what a normal, healthy person thinks. Because they become a sugar, crazy in the mind. See, the Chazal say that ein adam osa avera elam kei nichnas ruach shtus. A person only does an avera if a ruach shtus, a spirit of shtus, of craziness, overtakes them. So some ruach shtus, crazy, doesn't make any sense. That's what the Chazal is saying. It's shtus, doesn't make any sense. It's crazy. It's not sensible. It's not just desire. It's not sensible. So when we see people have great downfalls because of yesod, it doesn't make any sense. How could that be? The answer is that it's a shtus. It's crazy. It's true. It doesn't make any sense because that avera has to do with your mind not making any more sense. Mikoach pagam melu, as a power from these blemishes, hamiviem bechinas tira fadas. It brings a complete craziness. Higiu duramabel v'anshe stom v'amor lamatzav ko yarad v'shafal. That is how these generations ultimately reached such places of corruption, at the point that they had to be destroyed. The world or particular city all resulted from a distorted perspective that was rooted in yesod. Gimel. V'hinei midah zuhi midas hatshuka. This midah, as we described already, is the power of desire. Right. So if you try to dig down into the kochos of the neshama, the midah of yesod is the power of desire, and that is like the Baal Tanya says. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu want to create the world? So he says from the expression of the Medrash, Nesava HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a desire. And he says the desire doesn't have any rational sense. In other words, what the Torah is trying to say is that we don't understand. There's some sort of super-rational reason that has to do with taiva. In a way that we have a desire. Someone could say, "Why do you like steak?" What do you mean, why do I like it? I like it. That's what I like. It's part of my instinct. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a desire for resting His Shekhinah in our world. It's taiva. So taiva, in its root, is tshuka, is desire, and that a person has the power of the neshama, a very strong force that brings them to things and motivate them toward things in a very powerful way. That's tshuka. And we explained from Rabbi Brody Sr that more specifically, the midah of Yesod is the chibur of the mashpia and the mushpa. It's the point of connection between the giver and the receiver. It's a very intimate place of kesher, of bond, of unity between giver and receiver, like a husband and wife, of a bond between them and the intimacy between them. So also the power of Yesod isn't just desire, it's the point of where there's a real powerful intimate connection between two beings, and that sense of connectedness that is very desirous between two beings. That's the midah of Tshuka of Yesod. So as it's expressed in Kedusha, so it's a very powerful desire for a bond with Hashem, like David HaMelech describes. Tzam alacha nafshi, kam alacha basari. My soul thirsts for you, my flesh pines for you. These are very powerful expressions of desire that David HaMelech feels from his soul. He feels his nefesh has these feelings for Hashem, but he could feel them. Because he could feel them about his nefesh, that has these strong desires for Hashem. That's in the Kedusha. And in Tumah, this would be desires that are really sort of connected to the ego, to the I. Just for I. And in different expressions that we have taivos. And the Sfarim, describe the different main areas of taiva, having to do with usually kavod, honor, with yesod, with the bris, and with achila, with food. It's the general areas of where the taiva goes, toward food, toward honor, toward the bris, but it's all really all toward the self. So that's the midah of tshuka. So when imchas v'shal midas tshuka shlo misur b'dei asatra achra, if a person is a midah of tshuka, the desire is given over into the hands of Ra, ha'adam kulo achol taivos tshukas ras. They're completely consumed by different bad desires, as we described, different areas of where it can go. Ve'eish hara tu kadbo, the fire of Ra is boils within them. Ad ki yahodo nepach lamashchas, to the point that their glory can be transformed to destruction. The nepach kulo lios me'olam achurban, and they can be completely transformed to be from the world of destruction. Right, and that's very descriptive of where the midah goes. It goes to the world of destruction. In other words, it doesn't just go to mediocrity and it's sort of a balance of something, but it goes to churban, destruction. And that's what we see in this midah more than others, that it goes to a place of destruction. Through these damages, a person becomes mistabich, means like completely wrapped up and attached to all different types of things and middos. Bein adam lekono, whether it has to do with his relationship to Hashem. Bein adam lechavero, having to do with a relationship between people. Bein adam la'atzmo, whether it's a self relationship, how one relates to the self. But if a person elevates this midah and finds himself able to express it to the source of kedusha, shekula tia kodesh laHashem, they can use it in a way that's holy to Hashem. Hukulo b'kisufim uchukos elios. They will find that they'll be completely enwrapped in desires and yearnings of a heavenly type. They have spiritual yearnings, spiritual desires. Just like a person that has this midah has material or as physical desires. In the same way that this becomes what that person's into, right? So they are crazy about food, or very immersed in taivas nashim, and women, or in kavod. So this person will find that he has very great yearnings for spiritual, for Hashem, for Torah.